itself, but that's what people call them. For example, if you were looking for some new members for your advisory committee, and you, at an open meeting, appointed a committee of 3 or 4 people on the advisory committee to consider who the new members would be. That's an ad hoc committee. It's temporary in nature. Doesn't have, it's going to end. It doesn't have a regular subject matter jurisdiction, and so that can be not subject to the Brown Act. However, if you have more than a quorum, or if you have a quorum on that committee, once it has a quorum, now it's subject to the Brown Act. Okay, next slide. What is a meeting? I'm quoting from the Brown Act. It's a little bit, I'll tell you, let me just say one thing before. I put the site, I quoted this right here on the slide. The slide is in your book. I wanted you to see exactly what the Brown Act said. So if somebody tries to tell you, this is one of the things that's going on here. I've had a number of people say, this happened, I think, in Orange County, it happened in Shasta County, and various, it's going on in Fresno County for a while, where somebody in the county is say, oh, we can't have a quorum of our advisory committee go to the CICA conference. It's against the Brown Act. Okay? You all have heard that. Or some other thing where somebody says, oh, you can't do that because it's against the Brown Act. Okay, so my job here today is to hit those main points that come up for you where somebody says, you can't do that because it's against the Brown Act. And I want you to know and to have a place where you can look and say, according to the government code, section 54952.2, which I've written right down there, that's why I quoted this exactly, that you can say, no, the government code says this. Or if somebody says to you, well, you can't do that because, you can come back to this slide sometime in the future, 6 months from now, and you'll have a reference there. I don't, Amy Olson, the person that put this, I don't know what you call it, the project lady that put the conference together, asked me did I want a whole copy of the Brown Act in your materials, and I said no. The reason is because I know that with all of that material, and there's only maybe a few sections in there that are most relevant to you, it would be overwhelming and you never would be able to plow through it. So I didn't want to do that. I did give at the end a link for looking on your computer. If you want to find a copy of the Brown Act, you can find it based on the information that I've given you in this PowerPoint. You can get an entire copy of the Brown Act if you want to do that. But for right now, I just want you to know the exact wording of the sections that are the most important to you. Meeting, quote, any congregation of a majority of the members of a legislative body, now we've already talked, you guys are a legislative body, at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body or the local agency to which it pertains. So essentially, they're giving meeting a very broad definition here. It's any congregation of a majority of the members, but the purpose is to discuss or deliberate on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. Okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But there's the quotation and there's the legal citation to it for your future reference. A serial meeting. Now this isn't about your Wheaties and your Cheerios. This is serial, S-E-R-I-A-L, and serial meetings are prohibited. Well, a lot of people, see the Brown Act to a lot of people is a nuisance. It's like, oh man, we can't talk about that. It's against the Brown Act. Well, let's just do this, you know. Folks figuring out some way to get around the Brown Act. And I know it can be, it's a nuisance, you know, it's something you got to deal with. So what's a serial meeting? Well, okay, so let's say person A, I go to person B and I say, you know, I'd like to do whatever, something that has to do with our business, pass this resolution or something like that that's going to come up. What do you think about it? And we discuss it together. And then person B goes to person C and says, I just talked to John, and he's for this thing, and I wondered what you thought about it, and are you willing to vote for it? And then person C goes to D, okay? That's a serial meeting. You can't do that. So, for example, when I was in Marin County, one of the supervisors that I talked to, there were 5 supervisors, okay? So what's a quorum? It's 3. And they were very careful, and the county council drilled it into them, that you can't talk to more than one other person about an item that's on the agenda. In other words, you can't do a serial thing like that because it's illegal. It's just a violation of the Brown Act. So a serial meeting, I have the citation here too. It's use of a direct communication, personal intermediaries. You can't have somebody go talk for you, or technological devices, emails, that is employed by a majority of the members to develop a collective concurrence, or basically an agreement on some point. Collective concurrence as to action to be taken on an item by members of the legislative body, that's prohibited. Serial meetings are prohibited. Now we have a couple of different kinds of serial meetings. I described one that this word isn't in the Brown Act, but it's what people call it because it's an easy way to remember it. A daisy chain serial meeting. One person talks to the next like that. Another one is what they call a hub and spoke. So if I'm the hub and I go to person A, then I go to B, then I go to C, then I go to D, and talk to all of them and say, it's sort of natural, it's actually a pretty efficient way to do business, isn't it? It's not inherently bad. If you were in a Rotary Club or something like that, that's what you would do. You'd let folks know that this thing's coming up and why you're interested in it, and let them ask some questions and let them consider it and so on. And then you'd go to various people and you'd sell it. That's what you're doing, is you're selling your idea. Or you're opposed to something. You want to oppose something, so you want to talk to the different people and oppose it. You can't talk. You can only talk to a minority of the board. You can't talk to if there's a quorum of 6, you can only talk to 4, because you're the 5th. So the daisy chain and the hub and spoke are types of serial meetings that are prohibited. And remember I said, even if you have an intermediary do it, even if you do it over email or whatever, any way that you develop a collective concurrence with a majority of the members on a matter that's of issue before the body is in violation of the Brown Act, period. Exceptions. Now, the title of this slide is Exceptions Narrowly Construed. So what I want to say is that in order to achieve the purposes of the Brown Act, the overall purpose of the Brown Act is broadly construed. Like, when in doubt, yes, it's subject to the Brown Act. The exceptions, on the other hand, are very narrowly construed. They're not going to say, oh, well, we can include that within this exception. The exceptions are narrowly construed. Individual contacts. So if you have a contact from, say, a county person who comes and talks to you. By the way, if a county person comes and talks to 6 people on the advisory committee before the meeting, that's a no-no.